Welcome back, everybody. Now, in this course, the way that the lectures are set up is that we're going to look at two different tasks for each of the different question types. So in the previous lecture, we were looking at a discussion essay, and we'll be doing the same thing here, but with a different topic. The aim with these essays is to look at a slightly different topic for every different task so that you get a range of ideas that you can use in a range of different circumstances, and that you also get to learn a range of different topic related vocabulary as well. So we'll go through the usual process here, looking at this question. If we read this one together, we have many elderly people are no longer looked after by their families, but are put in care homes or nursing homes. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this trend? So just like last time, as I just said, we have a discussion essay. Very, very simple. Advantages and disadvantages. A good way to just consider whether it's going to be an opinion or a discussion, pure opinion or pure discussion, is to look at the conjunction. The conjunction here is an and. You're not being asked to decide between one or another. You're being asked to talk about both advantages and disadvantages. There are some exceptions to this, but a good rule to keep in mind is to think about the conjunctions when selecting the question type. So we have a discussion essay here, and now we have to think about the keywords. So what are the keywords here? Well, I would argue that elderly people, this is the main topic here really, we're looking at elderly people. Elderly people are no longer looked after. So it's no longer basically means not anymore. But it wouldn't work. We wouldn't say not anymore looked after. The structure would sound strange, but we can say no longer. Nice bit of vocabulary in the task there. No longer looked after by their families. So we definitely want to highlight that. But are put in care homes or nursing homes. Pretty much the same thing, really. There is only a very slight difference that doesn't really matter too much in terms of the task, and that's that nursing homes have to have registered nurses on hand at all times, whereas care homes, they still have 24-hour staff, but they may not always be registered nurses. I really think they've just put both in there just to make sure you understand what is being spoken about, to give you a better chance of understanding the task. And then we have, of course, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this trend. Okay, so step 1, step 2, both completed. Step 3, as always, is to write a plan. So now we can consider what we're going to write for our plan. And just like last time, advantages in the first paragraph, disadvantages in the second paragraph, and we're going to set it up quite similar to last time. So I wonder if you can think back and recall the way that we set up our paragraph in the previous essay. We started with our first point, our first advantage. I'll come under the topic sentence. So we might say, I would say nursing homes, care homes, as I just mentioned there, registered nurses or 24-hour staff. Clearly, both are much better equipped, not just in terms of the staff though, but in terms of the facilities available. Either way, they're better equipped to help old people. So we'll just write better equipped there. Oops, sorry, a little spelling mistake. Better equipped, and move over into the support sentence. Now the support sentence, we could talk about how they're better equipped, but to me, that immediately indicates an example. The first idea that comes to mind is an example of the facilities that are contained within nursing homes that you do not tend to find in family homes. Things like a lack of stairs. You know, most nursing homes will they will lack stairs, or if they do have stairs, they are required to also have elevators or stair lifts. So no stairs or stair lifts, elevators. So there's our example. Now, what's the result of this? Why is this a good thing? Well, you can either look at this as a support sentence or result, however you want to title it. You say as a result, or this means that. So this means that the the type of problems that old people tend to have, particularly with regard to their mobility, they are accommodated for. Let's say something like that. So let's say mobility or motion problems, however you want to put it, mobility problems are accommodated. Accommodated might not be the best term because it sounds a bit like they're welcoming the problems, but what we really mean here is that we're adapting ourselves to meet those needs. But I might change that a bit later. Now, what do you think would come next? If you think back to the previous essay that we looked at, we were looking at a question just like this. And what did we do when we got to the fourth sentence? Hopefully, you're telling me that we looked at another advantage because it's part of the task requirements. And that's what we're going to do here. We'll call it T2, but you can title it whatever you want, whatever's easiest. It's just another advantage, another point. And again, to be quite similar to the point I made earlier, they're better equipped, but not just in terms of facilities, but also in terms of staff. So they have the appropriate staff to help them, which you don't get at home. And the other thing that we did in the previous essay is we also looked for a source of context, a source of reference, a source of contrast, and we found that in continual assessment. If you look here, if you look at our keywords, we've also got the same thing that we can apply here, the word families. So in this last sentence here, I'm just going to look at the alternative, and that families, they do not have, or they rarely have, people who possess the same skills as staff, something like that. So families rare to have these skills. I'll turn that into a sentence later, but I think that looks pretty good, so we can move on to the disadvantages. Now, last time in the topic sentence, all I said was that there are some problems, that there are some disadvantages. This time I'm actually going to include one of the disadvantages in that topic sentence. And the idea that I have in mind, it's the most obvious one that appears to me, and I might even write that it's obvious a bit later, is that there is a lack of loved ones in the close vicinity. So that's definitely a struggle for people who live in nursing homes and care homes. Now, in my support sentence, I'm going to use a complex sentence. I already have it in mind that I want to talk about something that is possible, but that it's not good enough. It's not enough. So we'll say, when we get there, something like, while you can have friends come and visit you, it's not really enough. And this can lead to things like loneliness. So we'll just put in the words here. Let's say it's possible for friends to visit, possible visits, but loneliness is the result regardless, okay? Because the visits are they're not very frequent, let's say. Okay, now the third sentence, I want to go a step further. I want to talk about the result of the loneliness. So loneliness is a problem in and of itself, but it also creates another problem, because loneliness has been shown to increase the risk of depression, and it can even weaken the immune system, which is very dangerous for elderly people who already have compromised immune systems a lot of the time. So we can say things like risk of depression and weak immune system. I'm just going to write IS here to save a bit of time. And then, just like last time, we're going to add another disadvantage because it's part of the task requirements. Even though we've kind of already done it here, we've got two different disadvantages. They're just quite related. So we'll add a T2. Another problem I can imagine is that people who live in nursing homes are surrounded by people who are often very ill, very old, nearing death, and that's got to be quite a depressing environment in a lot of cases. So we can say something like they are surrounded by illness, death, things like that. We'll develop the sentence later, and then again we'll look at the result of that. What is the problem of being surrounded by illness and death? Well, such an environment is likely to limit or decrease perhaps happiness, and maybe even, again, if we come back to this idea here, maybe even trigger, really nice verb we could use there, trigger depression. Hopefully I'll remember that for later. I just want to make that a bit shorter in the plan. Okay, now that was a lot quicker today. with the plan, but we can go quicker still, of course, and I would have been much faster if I wasn't explaining each of my sentences. So remember, try to get those plans down to about 5 minutes, but just make sure to give yourself 1 or 2, 3 keywords for each of your sentences in your body paragraphs. This will actually speed you up as you go through the essay rather than slow you down. Those 5 minutes that you take at the beginning will save you maybe 10 minutes over the course of the essay, and they will give you much more accuracy and fluency and cohesion at the same time. So it's absolutely vital that you get this planning skill down. Okay, let's move into the introduction now. Okay, so like last time, like with a lot of IELTS tasks really, we're looking at something that has changed, and we're talking about the positives and negatives of that change. And that change has happened over time, again, like a lot of IELTS tasks. And last time we were looking at the same kind of thing. So we were able to use language like in recent years, this has changed, this has risen in popularity. So another expression that we can use in this regard is this one here. It is increasingly common. Or if it's going in the opposite direction, you might say it is increasingly uncommon, or it is increasingly unlikely to find this happening. But the increasingly, that adverb there, suggests a change, a trend over time. And because so many tasks in IELTS are like this, it's quite useful to learn this kind of language. So it is increasingly common for what to happen? For families to send their... Now we have elderly people here. I'm going to use the word elderly. I'll use that adjective, but instead of people, I'll make it more relevant to families and use the word relatives. Elderly relative. Families to send their elderly relatives. Very important here. You couldn't really even say people because you've got it as a possessive. Their people sounds a bit strange. Their elderly relatives to live in nursing homes. Okay. That's great. We don't really need to say care homes or nursing homes, otherwise you'll keep saying it over and over again. It really is okay just to pick one or the other, and then you can kind of alternate as you go through. It's not really a difference of British or American English. Like I say, I think it's just them giving you an extra chance to understand the task. So relatives to live in nursing homes, instead of or rather than, we could go with rather than look after them. We've got look after here. What's a similar expression? Take what? Take care of them at home, as in the family home. So it is increasingly common for families to send their elderly relatives to live in nursing homes rather than take care of them at home. Now, just like last time, and just like any discussion essay, you should be able to finish this introduction with one more sentence, so 2 sentences overall. What is that second sentence? How does it begin? Well, it's a planned sentence, and it begins, as always, like this essay will. This essay will. And it's going to be very similar to the one before. I don't recommend memorizing phrases with the intention of just applying them to any essay. That's only going to backfire. But do try to collect sentences and expressions that you can modify on the fly when you're in the exam. That's going to help you quite a lot. In this case here, we can certainly use quite a similar sentence to the one we had before. So highlight some of the benefits and drawbacks. So we change advantages and disadvantages. And quite similar to before, we're going to use the verb result from, and I'm going to use it, in this case, in the present perfect, to again suggest that there is a difference between past and present, which is what we talk about with the trend, so that have resulted from this. Now I could use the word trend, but if I wanted to paraphrase, I might use the word change, as in we're talking about a change in attitude, a change in the way we do something, so moving from at home to nursing homes. Or we could use the word switch as well, the change from that have resulted from this switch. So if we look at it all together, it is increasingly common for families to send their elderly relatives to live in nursing homes rather than take care of them at home. This essay will highlight some of the benefits and drawbacks that have resulted from this switch. Okay, now that looks really good to me. We'll just check on the word count there, make sure it's under 50. Yes, 40 words. That's a really nice number, not too long, not too short. We can move quite confidently into the first body paragraph now. So last time we began the body by saying to begin with the advantages, to begin with the positives. We'll look at something quite similar here, but just to mix it up a bit, to give you some variance, some variation. We'll start with looking at the positives. And in fact, if you want to even improve that sense of cohesion, show a little bit of listing, show a little bit of ordering, structuring, you can say looking firstly at the positives. So looking firstly at the positives, as always, follow that with a comma. And then very similar to last time we went with a crucial advantage. This time we're going to go with a significant advantage. Remember that vices, vital, important, crucial, essential, significant. Do be careful with these adjectives. They are not entirely synonymous. There are occasions, and a number of occasions, where one would not be replaced by another. But in this particular scenario here, with a significant advantage, you could replace this adjective with any of those other four adjectives: an important advantage, an essential advantage, a crucial advantage, a vital advantage, and then of course, as you have here, a significant advantage. But do be careful with those. Maybe have a look at some examples before you go replacing all of them with one another, because it's not going to work like that. But it is a nice word to remember: vices. Okay, a significant advantage is that. What do we have in our plan? We have better equipped. So nice and simple. Care homes, as I said, we're going to alternate between care homes and nursing homes. Care homes are not always, remember to avoid the generalization, they are often much better equipped, just like in the plan here, to manage, to help, maybe to deal with, could be a nice phrasal verb, to deal with the needs or maybe the demands. Not to say that old people are demanding, but they do have particular needs, and we can paraphrase here as demands, with the demands of elderly people than, and then I've got this comparative here, better. So better than what? Care homes are better equipped than family homes. It's the alternative. Again, we're making it clear that we've understood this part of the task as well. So looking firstly at the positives, a significant advantage is that care homes are often much better equipped to deal with the demands of elderly people than family homes. If you make generalizations too often throughout your response, you are not going to score anything above a 7. A 7's already high, but one thing that is made clear in the band descriptors is that in band 7, it says that there may be a tendency to overgeneralize. So you could score a band 7 like that, but that does not appear in band 8, which means you really need to cut that out if you want to go on and score in these higher bands. Okay, let's move on to the second sentence. Now we're looking at an example of how they're better equipped. How do we start an example sentence? For example, for instance, we know this hopefully already. So, for instance, what do we have? No stairs, stair lifts, elevators. So we're going to move on to nursing homes now. Nursing homes do not, again, avoid the generalization. This one's very important because some of them will. Do not usually have stairs. Okay, now a comma, because I want to talk about the ones that do. The ones that do, you could say the ones that do. It sounds a little bit informal to my ear, and ones, the expression ones to reference is very difficult to use. Instead, what I'm going to use is those which do. For those which do, as in those homes, those nursing homes, but we don't need to use that part of the sentence. We can omit that. It's understood. So for those which do, comma, and then we have this part of the plan here, stair lifts, or won't be both actually, sometimes both, but we'll go with it, or stair lifts or elevators need to be, by law, they need to be installed. Would be a nice verb to use there. So, for example, nursing homes do not usually have stairs, and for those which do, stair lifts or elevators need to be installed. You can tell by the pauses that I'm taking when I say the sentence where those commas should be. Let's move on to the following sentence. This is the support sentence. You can treat it like a result if you want. I'm just going to explain why it matters. When we explain, it's more like a support, like this means, this is important because, so this means that. What do we have here? Mobility problems. Let's say the typical mobility problems, which again tend to appear. So they're typical, they're not always there. They tend to appear, they don't always appear, which tend to appear among, okay, so we could use elderly people. We could use here, particularly because we're looking at it in quite a medical context with this mobility problems here, we could use this word here. This might be new to you. Geriatrics, to mean old people. Okay, I would not use this in an informal setting at all. It's definitely one for the more academic setting, but it does work in this case here. So among geriatrics are, okay, and what I have down here is accommodated, but I said that maybe that's not the best expression. Maybe we could look at what is not happening to these mobility problems. They're not being made worse because there are no stairs. There are stair lifts to help them. So not made worse. That doesn't sound so good to my ear, but a really nice verb that we could use to paraphrase that is this one. Exacerbated. Exacerbated is to make a bad situation even worse. So now we come to the additional point that we wanted to make. You can see this down here, this T2, so that we cover the requirement for advantages, plural. Last time we used a besides plus the previous point, besides reducing cheating. This time we'll be a little bit simpler about it, but we'll still be very cohesive. So we're going to use the expression not only this, not only this, and the this refers to this previous point. So we're still in a way being very cohesive, we're referencing, and again we follow that with a comma. You can also say besides this, but you wouldn't be able to say not only reducing cheating. It doesn't work that way. You could say something like not only do exams reduce cheating, so you would need to use the do plus a subject plus the completed thought. I won't get into that too much, but notice here you can either have the besides this or a not only this or a besides plus the previous point. And you can do the same with not only if you switch the structure a little bit. Do ask me a question about that in the Q&A function if you want more information on it. Okay, not only this, but, so not only, but, typical structure. Not only this, but, now we have staff, but the staff who work at nursing homes have been professionally, we'll say professionally trained. A nice collocation there. To manage, let's say, to manage we have the demands of the elderly up above, so we'll say the needs of the elderly. In fact, I said elderly people, so now I can say the elderly down here. Okay, now you'll notice that I don't use anything like many staff or often or tend to. It's because it's not really necessary here. If you work at a nursing home, at least in the UK, you have to have been professionally trained. So we don't need to change it there. So not only this, but the staff who work at nursing homes have been professionally trained to manage the needs of the elderly. The last little point I want to make is about families. The paragraph is already quite long. The essay is already quite long, 127 words, so I'm going to make this final sentence relatively short and just talk about, as you can see here, that it's quite rare for family members to possess these skills. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to write. It is rare for family members to possess these skills. And there is a sense of cohesion here thanks to the use of the demonstrative pronoun these. That way the reader has to go back to earlier in the sentence to work out that we're referring to the needs, we're referring to the skills of managing the needs of the elderly. The sentence cannot exist independently on its own, and that's what you should be aiming for when you think about coherence and cohesion. Great, so now we can move on into the second half of the essay.